Guys, you are not going to believe what I found when I came back from my 6-month business trip to London. The HOA in my neighborhood turned my house into a public museum. They're charging $50 per person to enter my own house. $50, people. To enter the house where I sleep, where I eat, where I live. And if you think that's insane, wait until you find out what they did to my bedroom. But first, if this story already has you angry, imagine how I felt. Hit that like button now because this story only gets more insane. So guys, let me give you the context for this absolute madness. 6 months ago, I got my dream job offer in London. International architecture project, paying in pounds, everything I'd ever wanted. So I packed my bags, locked up my house here in Beverly Hills adjacent. Yeah, a $2 million house I bought with my own blood, sweat and tears, and left for the adventure. But there's one detail about this house that nobody in the neighborhood knew, and it's going to blow your minds at the end of this story. During those 6 months, I barely had contact with the US. Time zones, intense work, you know how it is. I only sent a few emails to the security company watching the property, and they always replied that everything was normal. Everything was normal. What a joke, right? So last week, I finally came back. 14-hour flight, jet lag destroying me, dead tired. I caught an Uber from LAX and, guys, when that Uber turned onto my street, I thought I'd entered a horror movie. 3 tour buses parked in front of my house. 3. Those huge, yellow buses full of people with cameras around their necks. A line of at least 40 people waiting on the sidewalk. Velvet ropes like at a museum. And the worst part, a giant sign on my door reading, Historic Beverly Hills Mansion, open for tours, $50 per person. $50, people. They were charging $50 for people to enter my house. The house where I pay property taxes, where I pay HOA fees, where I pay the mortgage. If you're feeling the same outrage I felt, clap your hands. Because this is just the beginning. Guys, I got out of that Uber literally in shock. Legs shaking, heart racing. Because look, one thing is having problems with neighbors, right? Another thing entirely is coming home to find your house turned into a tourist attraction. And then I thought, man, let me see how they're presenting my house to these people. I infiltrated the crowd of tourists, put on sunglasses, a baseball cap, and got in line like I was just another visitor. And guys, what I heard traumatized me forever. There was a tour guide there, a lady about 60 years old, all excited with a megaphone in her hand. And she started telling the history of the house. This magnificent residence was built in 1987 by the famous Italian architect Giuseppe Benedetti, who came to America fleeing the Sicilian mafia. He built this house as a secret hideout, which is why it has secret passages and an underground tunnel that leads all the way to downtown Los Angeles. Guys, Giuseppe Benedetti. Underground tunnel. The house was built by my dad in 1987, yes, but his name is John Smith and he's a retired construction worker from Ohio. Sicilian mafia, man. They invented that my dad fled from the mafia. The man whose biggest adventure in life was winning $20 on a scratch-off lottery ticket. But wait, it gets worse. The guide continued. And look at this enchanted garden, where Giuseppe planted rare medicinal herbs that he brought from Sicily. Some of these plants still cure incurable diseases today. Medicinal herbs from Sicily. Guys, that garden has grass and 3 tomato plants that I planted before I left. 3 cherry tomato plants I bought at Home Depot. But the worst was yet to come. Because then the guide said the sentence that made me completely lose my sanity. And now, let's enter the house and see the famous secret room where Giuseppe hid the mafia's treasure. The secret room with the mafia treasure was my bedroom. With my bed, my dresser, my underwear in the drawer. Guys, if you think this is absurd, wait until you find out what I discovered inside my own house. Hit that like button now if you want to see this epic revenge I prepared. People, I needed to get inside that house. I needed to see with my own eyes what they'd done to my home. So I bought a ticket. That's right, I paid $50 to enter my own house. $50 that came out of my pocket to see my house. If that's not the height of absurdity, I don't know what is. And then, guys, when I walked through the front door, I almost had a heart attack. They had turned my living room into a mini museum. Mini museum. They'd put velvet ropes around my couch, the couch I bought at Ashley Furniture on a payment plan, and a little sign reading, "Original couch where Giuseppe planned his hits against rival families." Hits against rival families. The only hit I ever planned on that couch was against Netflix when I canceled my subscription to save money. But then I saw something that made me completely lose it. On my dining table, that simple wooden table I bought at the mall, they had set up an exhibition with my personal belongings. My family photos in frames with little signs, "Benedetti family, last records before exile." My architecture diploma in a golden frame, fake certificate used to disguise his true identity. And the worst of all, the photo from my graduation, where I'm hugging my parents, with a huge sign reading, "Giuseppe with his henchmen after eliminating the Corleone family." Guys, they called my parents mafia henchmen. My mother, who's been a first-grade teacher for 30 years, became a mafia henchwoman. My father, who built this house brick by brick working 7 days a week, became a mobster. But then I thought, calm down, breathe. I need to find out who's behind this. And I started following the group silently, paying attention to every detail. The guide took us to the kitchen, and I discovered they had turned my refrigerator into a disguised safe where Giuseppe kept stolen diamonds. My expired yogurts became evidence of the mobster's secret life. In the bathroom, they invented that my toilet was a secret escape device connected to Milan's sewers. The toilet that I myself unclogged 1,000 times when it got blocked. But it was when we got to my bedroom that I discovered the most shocking truth of all. People, when the guide opened my bedroom door, I wasn't prepared for what I was going to see. They had transformed my bedroom into a replica of an 80s mob office. My simple queen bed became a bed with secret compartments for weapons. My dresser from the discount store became an 18th century Italian piece used to store maps of conquered territories. And on my desk, where I used to do architecture projects, they set up a scene with fake documents, old maps, and a sign, "Desk where Giuseppe planned the biggest heist in Italian mafia history." But then, guys, I heard the guide say something that changed everything. "And see, tourists, this is the highlight of our tour. Did you know that the real owner of this house never came back? Some say Giuseppe is dead, others that he fled to Switzerland. But we, from the Beverly Hills Premium Homeowners Association, decided to preserve this historic house so culture wouldn't be lost." Beverly Hills Premium Homeowners Association. Guys, I had never in my life heard of this association. And look, I've lived in this neighborhood for 5 years. That's when I started putting the pieces of the puzzle together. After the tour, I stayed hidden in the garden and started observing. I saw the guide counting the ticket money in a little box. Over $2,000 just that afternoon. $2,000 per day exploiting my house. And then a woman in a BMW arrived, all dressed up, and started talking to the guide. And I heard her say, "Margaret, how are sales today? We need to hit our goal of $10,000 per week if we want to buy that beach house in Malibu." They were using my house to buy a beach house. And then the woman continued. "And the lawyer confirmed that as long as the owner doesn't show up, we have the right to preserve the historic patrimony however we see fit. If he hasn't come back in 6 months, he's probably not coming back at all." Historic patrimony. The house my dad built in 1987 with his own hands became historic patrimony. That's when I discovered who this woman was. You know who it was? Valerie Steinberg, lawyer, neighborhood resident for 2 years, and self-proclaimed president of the Beverly Hills Premium Homeowners Association. An association that she herself created, with her herself as president, to steal my house. And people, if you think this story can't get more absurd, wait until you find out what I discovered when I went to investigate this so-called association. Hit that like if you want to see this woman get what she deserves. People, after discovering who was behind all this, I went home, or rather, to the hotel where I had to stay because my house was occupied by tourists, and started investigating this Valerie Steinberg and her homeowners association. And guys, what I discovered was dirtier than I imagined. First discovery: this Beverly Hills Premium Homeowners Association was registered only 2 months after I traveled. Coincidence? I don't think so. Second discovery: the association has only 3 members. Valerie herself, her husband, and Margaret, who is her sister-in-law. 3 people pretending to be an entire association. Third discovery: in the association's registration documents, they put my house address as the association's headquarters. They literally stole my address to create a legal entity. But the fourth discovery was what made me most angry. They registered the association as a historic and cultural patrimony preservation entity, which gives rights to tax benefits and even government subsidies. They weren't just stealing my house, guys. They were making money from the government to steal my house. But I didn't stop there. I went after more information about Valerie. And I discovered she has a, let's say, questionable history. Valerie Steinberg graduated in law 15 years ago, but with her bar registration suspended twice. Reason: embezzlement of client assets. She's a specialist in taking what isn't hers. Lives in a rented 2-bedroom apartment, has a BMW financed for 80 months, and her biggest dream in life is to have a beach house. That's why she decided to use my house to make her dream come true. And that's when, people, I decided I was going to give her a taste of her own medicine. But before going for revenge, I needed to understand one thing. How did they get access to my house? I went after the security company I hired. And guess what? The company went bankrupt 2 months after I left. The owner disappeared, took all the money, and abandoned all the properties he was taking care of. And how did Valerie know the house was abandoned? Simple: her husband, Robert Steinberg, was a partner in the security company. Guys, they planned everything. Robert bankrupted the company on purpose, took the keys to all the houses under the company's care, and Valerie chose mine to set up her scheme. They investigated my entire life. They found out I was out of the country, that I had no family living in the US, that nobody would miss the house for a few months. And they set up this diabolical scheme. But you know what, people? They messed with the wrong person. Because there's something about me they didn't discover in their research. And when they find out who I really am, this story is going to have the most epic ending you've ever seen. If you're anxious to see this revenge, hit that like button now and get ready for what's coming. People, the time for truth has come. The time for you to find out who I really am. And when you find out, you'll understand why this story is going to have the most satisfying ending in YouTube history. Remember I said there was a detail about my house that nobody in the neighborhood knew? A detail that was going to blow your minds? My name is John Paul Smith Jr. I'm an architect, as you already know. But I'm not just any architect. I am the great-great-grandson of Jonathan Smith, the original founder of this city. That's right. Jonathan Smith, the pioneer who in 1887, exactly 140 years ago, bought all this region for $50,000 from the federal government. Jonathan Smith bought 15,000 acres of virgin land, which today includes not only Beverly Hills, but West Hollywood, Santa Monica, Brentwood, and 12 more neighborhoods in Los Angeles. And you know what's the most incredible detail of this story? My family never officially sold these lands to the city. In the original deeds, which have been kept in the registry office for over a century, it states that the Smith family granted the use of the lands for urban development, but kept the original ownership. In other words, people, legally, technically, officially, I am the owner of half of Los Angeles. Do you understand the dimension of this? Valerie didn't just invade my house. She invaded the house of the guy who owns the entire neighborhood. But wait, it gets even more interesting. Because when my great-great-grandfather granted the lands, he put a specific clause in the contract. If any direct descendant of the Smith family wanted to reclaim the properties, they just had to present the original deeds and notify the current occupants. And guess what documents I've had kept in the bank safe since my grandfather died? The original deeds from 1887. Guys, do you believe this woman tried to steal the house from the guy who can legally expropriate her and everyone in the neighborhood? And that's when I came up with the most epic revenge plan in HOA history. People, after discovering I had all this power in my hands, I could have simply gone there, shown the documents, and sent everyone away. But where would be the fun in that? No. I wanted them to feel exactly the same desperation I felt when I found my house turned into a circus. I wanted poetic justice. So I elaborated a three-phase plan, which I called Operation Giuseppe Benedetti. Get the irony? Phase 1. The infiltration. I created a false identity. Marco Rossetti, descendant of Italian immigrants, expert in Italian mafia history, and long-lost nephew of Giuseppe Benedetti. I bought Italian clothes, studied the accent, memorized everything about the Sicilian mafia, and even hired an intensive Italian course on YouTube. 3 days of intense preparation. I was going to present myself as Giuseppe's legitimate heir, coming from Italy to claim my uncle's inheritance. Phase 2. The confrontation. I was going to appear in the middle of one of the tours, create a giant drama, and put Valerie in an impossible situation. Either she admits the house isn't historic, or she has to deal with an Italian mobster claiming the property. Phase 3. The final revelation. After seeing her squirm trying to explain the situation, I was going to take off the mask and show who I really was. And then, show the 1887 deeds. I spent 3 days rehearsing. Memorized phrases in Italian, studied typical gestures, even bought a hat and an overcoat to look more theatrical. And finally D-Day arrived. People, last Tuesday, 2 p.m. Peak tour time. I dressed as Marco Rossetti, grabbed a briefcase with fake Italian documents, and went to MY house. 3 tour buses at the door, as always. Line of 50 people. Margaret with the megaphone explaining about the secret tunnel to Milan's sewers. And then, I made my grand entrance. Scusa. Scusa per favor. I started yelling in the middle of the line. Io sono Marco Rossetti, nephew of Giuseppe Benedetti. Guys, the effect was immediate. Everyone stopped, Margaret dropped the megaphone, and I saw Valerie running out of the house. And then I continued the performance. Questa è la casa di mio zio. Where is Giuseppe? I look for my uncle Giuseppe. People, the tourists panicked. Some started recording with their phones, others ran away thinking there would be shooting, and there was a lady who fainted thinking she'd met a real mobster. And then Valerie came up to me, all nervous, and said, "Sir, you can't interrupt our historic tour. This house is cultural patrimony protected by our association." And I, keeping the character. Patrimony cultural? Questa è la casa della mia famiglia. My uncle Giuseppe Benedetti. He built this house with blood and tears. Guys, I saw Valerie's soul leaving through her mouth. She started stuttering, sweating cold, because she realized that her invented story had turned against her. And then I pulled out the briefcase with the fake documents and started gesturing like in the mafia movies. I have here tutti I documenti. All the papers. Giuseppe è mio zio. This house belongs to Famiglia Benedetti. People, it was complete chaos. Tourists running to the buses, Margaret hiding behind the tree, and Valerie trying to think of a way out. And that's when she made the stupidest mistake of her life. "Mr. Marco, maybe we can talk and reach an agreement. The house generates good income, we can split the profits." She tried to bribe the supposed mobster nephew. And that's when, people, it was time for the final revelation. Guys, I looked into the eyes of that woman who had stolen my house, who had invented lies about my family, who had turned my father's life work into a circus, and then I slowly took off my hat, my sunglasses, and said, "Valerie, my name isn't Marco Rossetti. My name is John Paul Smith Jr. and this is my house. People, Valerie's face was the most satisfying thing I've ever seen in my life. The woman literally froze. Eyes wide, mouth open, like she'd seen a ghost. And then I continued. But you know what's the most interesting detail of this whole story, Valerie? You didn't just invade my house. You invaded the house of the legal owner of this entire neighborhood. And then I pulled out of the briefcase, not the fake documents, but the original deeds from 1887. Jonathan Smith, my great-great-grandfather, bought all these lands in 1887. And according to the original deeds, which were never revoked, I am the legal owner of 15,000 acres, including your house, Valerie. Guys, the woman had a breakdown. She literally fainted right there on the sidewalk. Robert had to throw water on her face. And the tourists who were still there started applauding. They understood they had witnessed the greatest plot twist in tourist tour history. But I didn't stop there. Because half justice isn't justice. That same afternoon, I went to the registry office, filed a formal property reassertion notice, and notified all the neighborhood residents that they have 90 days to negotiate new land use contracts. And you know what I did with Valerie's house specifically? I turned it into a museum. That's right. Valerie's house is now the Museum of Greed and Fraudulent Appropriation. Charging $100 per person to see how a scammer tried to steal a historic house. I put Margaret as the tour guide. She already had experience, and now she tells visitors how her former boss tried to steal the house from the city's owner. And the museum's income? It all goes to a charity fund for victims of real estate scams. If you're feeling the same satisfaction I am, clap your hands now. People, today marks exactly 1 week since I got my house back. And you know how it is now. Exactly as I left it. My tomato plants in the garden, my simple bed in the bedroom, my Ashley furniture couch in the living room. No Giuseppe Benedetti, no Sicilian mafia, no secret tunnels. Just the house of a regular guy, son of a construction worker, grandson of a baker, and great-great-grandson of a pioneer who had the vision to invest in land when land was worth nothing. And Valerie? Well, she's living in a 1-bedroom apartment in the valley, because she discovered that messing with other people's property can be very expensive. Robert lost his business license, and Margaret, well, she's happy guiding the museum. At least now she tells true stories. The lesson from this story, people, is, never underestimate the power of truth, never mess with what isn't yours, and always, always investigate who you're trying to scam. And you, who followed this epic saga from beginning to end, now I need your help. If this story made you feel justice being done, if you rooted for me from start to finish, if you felt the same satisfaction I felt seeing this scammer get what she deserved, smash that like button. Let's get to 100,000 likes on this video. And if you want more revenge stories, more cases of people who got what they deserved trying to scam others, if you want to be part of this family that fights for justice, click the subscribe button now. And don't forget to hit the bell. In the comments, I want to know, which part of the story made you angriest? Which was the most satisfying moment? And have you ever been through a similar situation? Tell me everything down there. And if you have any friend who's had problems with neighbors, any relative who's been scammed, share this video. Because everyone needs to know that justice might be delayed, but it always comes. And next week, I'm going to tell you the complete story of the 1887 documents, how my great-great-grandfather managed to buy half of Los Angeles for $50,000, and what I plan to do with all these lands. Spoiler, you won't believe the plans I have. That's it for today, people. Remember, never mess with someone's house, because you never know if that person might own the entire city. Until next time, and may justice always be with you. Oh, and one last thing. Do you want to know what I discovered when I went to investigate the other 47 neighborhood residents who also need to negotiate with me? The story gets much more interesting, but that's a topic for the next video.